We're going to, for a few more minutes, listen into this Virginia gubernatorial rally that's now happening for Winsome Earl Sears, in Blacksburg, Virginia. Let's continue to listen.
We're going to work with police instead of against police, because when we came in, we had some departments with 40% vacancies. We had morale, rock bottom. Governor Youngkin and I launched Operation Bold Blue Line to put more cops on our streets. I promised Virginians we were going to prosecute repeat violent offenders, which we did. We went after them. We launched Operation Ceasefire in our most violent cities because 5% of felons were committing over 50% of the violent felonies. To give you just one example, Roanoke, one of our ceasefire cities, 0.12% of the population of Roanoke, that's less than 1/5 of 1%, were committing over 30% of the homicides. So if you want to lower crime, what do? You got to go after the repeat violent offenders. Chris knows this. Chris Oberchain's been a prosecutor. He knows what it is to go after repeat violent offenders. We investigated them. We indicted them. We prosecuted them. The city of Roanoke crime rate, their murder rate has dropped 62%. I was just in Hopewell, another one of our cities, 66% drop in the crime rate. When you go after repeat violent offenders, you lower violent crime. Now, that makes sense, right? Now, we went after the fentanyl dealers, I promised you. My office alone the last 4 years has prosecuted and removed enough fentanyl off the streets that would have taken the lives of 7 million Virginians. We went after the big pharmaceutical companies that push OxyContin on so many Virginians. We sued them and got some of the largest settlements in Virginia history. $1.5 billion and counting, that's money that goes to addiction treatment. So on the supply side and the demand side, we had tackled this addiction crisis. And so earlier this year, DEA, national headquarters, they announced that we weren't top 10, not top 5. We're the #1 state in the entire country in the drop of addiction deaths. So listen, now I get the great joy of asking Virginians to rehire me to continue to protect them. Now, I don't know if you know this, and I know my race has been really below the national radar and hasn't gotten a lot of attention. But there is someone else applying for this job. His name is Jay Jones. Jay Jones is asking you, Virginia, to hire him to be the top prosecutor in the state. But he's never been a prosecutor a single day in his life. And the best predictor of future performance is past performance. We know what he did in the General Assembly. I served with him. I saw it with my own eyes. Nothing is right. Well, he did something. Every chance he had a moment to stand with victims and stand with police, he said no, and he chose to stand with felons. He voted to end the mandatory reporting requirement of sexual assault in schools, which led directly to the national scandal in Loudoun, where a 15-year-old boy put on that skirt, walked in that bathroom, brutally assaulted that young girl, and then just simply got transferred to another school where it happened again rather than cops ever be finding out about it. He's championed removing SROs out of our schools. Those are literally the cops in our schools protecting our kids. He wants them out of our schools. I want them in our schools. He voted for the Ralph Northam Felon Early Release Program that has allowed over 9,000 felons to be released early, sometimes with decades on their sentences. In less than 2 years, 50% of them were already rearrested. By every objective standard, Jay Jones does not have the qualifications for this job or the judgment of this job. But now we know that this election has become so much more than just politics. This election has become a national referendum on decency. There's a lot of things that surprised me in my race. But one of the things that has shocked me is the level of national and even international attention that has come our way. I've gotten press calls from Munich, from Sydney to London, from Toronto. It shocks me how much foreigners are now paying attention to American politics, because everyone is shocked by this. We have never had anybody run for Attorney General like Jay Jones, who's literally advocated for violence against the innocent. We've never had anybody run for Attorney General like Jay Jones, who literally said he wanted to see children die in their mother's arms. We've never had anybody run for Attorney General, ever, that has said he wanted to see cops die. I still cannot get my arms around that. You're the top prosecutor, the top cop, and you told a colleague you wanted to see cops die because maybe if a few of them died, they would change how they do policing. We've never had anybody run for Attorney General like Jay Jones, who's asking you to hire him to be the top prosecutor while he's currently under a criminal investigation by a special prosecutor for lying to a judge. When this whole affair just broke out in the open, people asked me, what was your reaction? I said, well, the first, separate the politics was just on a personal level. Todd Gilbert is a dear friend. He was my roommate during the General Assembly session. We'd rent a house. I know his wife, Jennifer. She's absolutely lovely. I would see those kids running up and down the hallways of the General Assembly. Guess what? So has Jay Jones. Jay Jones knows Todd. Jay Jones has met Jennifer. Jay Jones has met those children. This was not a hypothetical. This is a real husband and father that he wanted to see dead. This is a real mother that he has met that he wanted to see her children die in her arms. And people are like, was he joking? No, if you understand the text message exchange, he was on a tirade and angry because Todd Gilbert had dared to say nice words about a Democrat state delegate who had just passed away. And in his words, what he wanted to do is he wanted to urinate on the graves of his political opponents. And there's this exchange that just chilled me, where his colleague is telling him, Jay, please stop. Jay, this is completely inappropriate. Jay, you literally are hoping Jennifer Gilbert's children die in her arms. And he responds by his own handwriting, yes. Because as I've told you before, only through pain do people change on policy. Think about that. Think about that worldview. Part of what made that so chilling for me was my family story. You know, I travel around the state a lot, and sometimes I get asked, what kind of name is Miyares anyway? And I like to say, what's a Southern name? It's really deep South. But my family fled from Cuba with nothing. And I remember my mother telling me this, and this popped in my brain right after I read this horrific exchange. And she said, you know, in Cuba, when the communists took over and the Marxists were arresting people in the middle of the night, like my uncle Angel Miyares, and putting him up on the wall in a mock execution, or they were beating the innocent, and they were nationalizing businesses, and they were taking away people's homes.
All right, as you see, they're listening in to this Winston Earl Sears campaign event there in Virginia, as the current Attorney General is also speaking on her behalf. We've heard from a number of Republicans there in the state as they are continuing their push towards Election Day. Wanted to make sure we